What's up, everybody? So today we're going to be talking about what the difference is between training in the gi and training no gi. What is no gi jiu-jitsu? How often should I train no gi jiu-jitsu? And what is my own preference and thought about training no gi? So with that, we're going to get into the video right now. How's it going, everybody? My name is Chase Hill. I'm a Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I've been training for over 10 years and I've been teaching for over 8 years now. I thank you guys for tuning in to this episode, and if you could, I would like for you guys to hit the like and subscribe button down below so you never miss the latest videos. I typically do some narrative sparrings, I do some Jiu-Jitsu techniques, I do different talks like this. So if you guys like things Jiu-Jitsu, this is probably a pretty good channel for you guys. Today we're going to be talking about what is no gi jiu-jitsu. That's going to be the focus on the topic, and how often should I train it? Maybe is it even worth training? Should I even try it? Kind of just shine some light on what no gi jiu-jitsu is. So first we need to talk about what is the gi. So if you are new to jiu-jitsu and you've either never trained before or you're just starting to train, the gi is typically the uniform that you see most of the students wearing when you walk into an academy. It's also known as a kimono at some places, but most commonly it's called a gi. Typically, you wear a jacket, you wear pants, and you wear a belt. Actually, I may have one. Hang on. So, like I said, typically we wear some kind of a jacket, right? We have a jacket. Then we wear pants with it. And then last but not least, you have your belt with it. Most academies, when you first walk in and you first start class, they want you to wear a gi. It's typically done for uniformity purposes. It makes people feel like they're part of the group. Also, there are certain techniques that you can do in the gi that you cannot do in the gi. So a lot of times the more traditional jiu-jitsu, it is taught in the gi first. Now that doesn't mean that you can't do some jiu-jitsu techniques that you learn in the gi while training no gi, but there are obviously certain techniques that you can't do. For example, you can actually use the gi to choke a person, right? We can do this thing called an X choke or a collar choke, where I can put my hands inside of someone's jacket and strangle them. But if they are not wearing a gi, because we're doing no gi training, then I don't have that option to use that technique. So there's a simple example of really the main differences between gi and no gi. In gi, we wear the gi. In no gi, we don't wear the gi. So what do people typically wear when they train no gi? Typically people wear a rash guard or a t-shirt. Sometimes I go shirtless depending on the academy that runs around. And they typically wear shorts. So they wear like fight shorts or board shorts, a lot of places wear, or just regular shorts in general. Sometimes people even just wear the pants from the gi and they just have a no jacket on top. That's the main differences between gi and no gi. Obviously, you train in the gi and then you don't train in the gi, and the attire is mainly different, right? To make it simple, now we're gonna get into some more details about that here in a second. I think training no gi should be a priority at some point in your journey. Two, also, you're gonna be at the disadvantage of possibly at a school that you train at. So there are still some schools that train purely in the gi. They don't teach any no gi classes. Now they may teach techniques that don't require you to hold the gi, but their sparring is not done without the gi. They don't maybe just have a no gi class where you don't even have the option to not wear the gi. You're at a disadvantage depending on which academy you go to if you want to train no gi. Now you could still do it, even if the academy doesn't really make it a priority. There are still ways that you can do it. Like I said, you can learn techniques, or whenever you're rolling or sparring, you don't have to grab the gi. You can make a self-conscious effort to not grab it and do the techniques without hanging on to the gi. It's hard to do in the beginning. I think it's one of the hardest things to do because it's so easy just to grab some cloth and hang on to that it can possibly mess you up. So if your academy doesn't offer a no gi only class, that's gonna be your option, right? Now, what is growing a little bit more popular is like Eddie Bravo. If you don't know who that is, he runs a very large organization called 10th Planet. 10th Planet is a I guess a chain of jiu-jitsu schools that specializes in no gi jiu-jitsu. Now they still do jiu-jitsu, they still do arm locks and chokes and everything else that you would go into a regular jiu-jitsu academy, except they never wear the gi and they mainly train no gi. I do believe that some of his schools, the instructors also train in the gi. So even though they're a 10th Planet school, they still train in the gi. But I do believe that at Eddie Bravo's head school, where he mainly teaches out of, they don't train anything in the gi. That is becoming more popular for students to want to specifically work on no gi jiu-jitsu. Basically means they really want to emphasize not relying on the gi to train. I think everyone should make it a priority at some point in their career to do. You can argue, some people argue that training no gi is better for self-defense. And then there, on the other side of the coin, there's people that say that training gi is the best for self-defense. So you're gonna have people on the both sides. I personally think that both should be trained for self-defense. Especially if you live in an area where people are gonna be wearing jackets a lot for half of the year, that's a perfect idea to train the gi. There's a bunch of techniques in self-defense that you can use to hold somebody down, to apply submission with their own clothes, right? Or throw them down or control them. The big thing too is the difference actually in training in gi versus no gi. Like if your school has a no gi class and everyone is not wearing a gi, the biggest difference is that the game is much faster. So whenever you're sparring and you're trying techniques, it's much faster. People are sliding left and right because they're more sweaty. You don't have this cloth to hang on to. People are moving around. You have to really work on certain grips. Even if you are training no gi and you wear the gi, there is still the friction of the cloth touching each other. So it does slow it down still. Even though you can still practice no gi techniques like making sure you're not grabbing it, it's not gonna be the same as specifically when two people are training no gi and they try to spar with each other and they slip and slide all over the place. Those are the biggest differences in training, and if you should make it a priority, like I said, I think everyone should make it a priority at some point in their career. It doesn't mean that that has to be the first thing. I would say typically most people start focusing on no gi later in their career, just because most traditional jiu-jitsu schools, they want you to learn the gi. What is my preference? I get asked this quite a bit from my own students and just in general when I tell people, when I'm training with people, people ask me, do I enjoy training in the gi or do I enjoy training no gi more? To tell you the truth, I've varied. I have had points in my career where I really liked the gi more than no gi. Then there were points where I've flipped, where I have enjoyed training no gi more than gi. I would say right now, my flavor is I'm really liking the gi. The gi takes much longer to master because there's so many things that you can do with the gi and different grips and different chokes and different ways on how to do these moves that it takes much longer to master. And I think when I got my black belt, I knew very surface level of how to use the gi, but now that I'm a black belt, I really have enjoyed deep diving and learning how to use it on a more effective level. Right now I like the gi, but I still like training no gi too. It's a good mix-up. It doesn't make the training as boring. Never that training is boring, but you do find yourself at times doing the same moves over and over again, especially in the gi, because you just rely on those techniques. So when you take off the gi and you roll no gi, you're forced to do different techniques. You're forced to work on different grips, different controls, possibly go for different positions. I do enjoy training no gi, but I would say right now, today, while I'm shooting this video, I prefer training in the gi. Also, typically in the gi, if you're a smaller person and the person is much bigger than you're sparring with, but your skill is maybe a little bit more, if you can out-technique the person with the gi, you have a very large advantage. You're really able to use that gi as extra leverage to do takedowns, to use controls, to obviously choke and submit people. So the gi is like a force multiplier of leverage and power that you don't have no gi. So if you're a small person and you train with a lot of big people, it's a good idea to learn how to use the gi, because when you're feeling lazy one day, or you're feeling like you need to pull out the big guns and this big person's on top of you, definitely that gi will help. Now, if you train at a no gi only school, I'm sorry, you better get good at the no gi techniques and just keep working at it. It's typically the most common things that I get asked about gi and no gi. Just as a quick review, right? Obviously, training in the gi, you wear the uniform. There are certain techniques that are allowed that you can do because you have the uniform, you have the gi on. No gi, typically if people are doing no gi training, they're wearing shorts and a rash guard and they don't have a jacket. So those chokes or obstacles are out of their way. The no gi game is typically a lot faster, and because of that, people tend to maybe lean toward that because they enjoy that. Actually kind of growing the sport a little bit faster, because I think more people can relate to the no gi aspect, especially here in America because we have American wrestling. So it seems like no gi has been trending a little bit more lately. In the gi, like I said, it takes longer to master. So a lot of times you have to be really knowledgeable in jiu-jitsu, like a nerd like I am, where you really appreciate the little minute details that are happening in the gi. So with that, yeah, those are the biggest things. I think everyone should train no gi. You should make it a priority at some point in your career. Even if your school doesn't have a no gi class, try your best to do a couple rounds where you're not grabbing the gi. Like, try to train your brain to not do it and just work on techniques that don't rely on you to grab the gi. So maybe one day you'll be able to either visit a school, or your school will implement changes where, you know, they're gonna have no gi specific training where no one wears a gi, because that is very valuable to learn for self-defense. And thank you guys if you made it to the end of this video. I really appreciate that. Make sure you give me a like and subscribe down below. Also, leave me something in the comments about what do you like to do. Do you rather train in the gi? Do you like to train no gi? What is your preference and why? So with that, thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.